So we begin our new feature, the legal landscape today, and like we mentioned, we are in fact partnering with our friends at DunnCox Attorneys at Law, and we'll be discussing every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock some topics of interest, wills and trusts, probate, estate planning, among many other interesting topics. Today, we're looking at sexual harassment, and we're joined by partner at DunnCox Attorneys, Mr. Emile Leiba, who is our guest on the telephone. Welcome to Legal Landscape. Morning, Mr. Leiba. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Richie. I'm fine, thanks. And you?
I'm doing well. We're very excited about this feature. I know that we'll be learning a lot, and yourself and the team at DunnCox want to commend you on this partnership.
Thank you. We are happy to partner with you, and we hope that people will be educated, they will learn, and everyone will enjoy the session.
Most definitely. Now, Mr. Leiba, the debate on sexual harassment is currently ongoing in Parliament as lawmakers seek to amend the laws governing this topic. First of all, I'd like to start by asking you, what is sexual harassment? Can you break it down for us in terms of a definition?
All right. Well, there's currently under existing law, no legal definition for sexual harassment. But the draft legislation that is currently being considered defines sexual harassment as the making of any unwelcome sexual advance towards a person by another person, which is reasonably regarded as offensive or humiliating by the person towards whom the sexual advance is made, or has the effect of interfering unreasonably with the work performance of the person to whom the sexual advance is made, or creating an intimidating, offensive, or a hostile work environment.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you for that. Now, I've heard it said that sexual harassment can be visual, it can be physical, it could even be verbal. How does one determine whether an act or conduct or behavior, if we should put it that way, is considered sexual harassment?
Well, the most important thing to know about sexual harassment is that it doesn't matter what the person who is doing the action thinks about it. It's the person who is on the other end, as it were. Their opinion is really what matters the most. As in, it has to be reasonable, because, it can't be that you just at a mere glance and you think you're harassed, so there may be some people are hyper, ultra sensitive for a variety of reasons. But generally speaking, what it is that you have to consider how the other person will receive your behavior. Mm-hmm. So if you are a huggy person, if you like to hug, if you like to give a little back rub, if you like to say, oh, that's a nice looking dress today, or oh, you look nice in it, that can potentially constitute harassment. If you look a little too long and a little too intently, even if you're an intense individual, that can possibly be harassment,
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So, it's all about how the person receives it.
I find the answer quite interesting. One has to be careful, really.
You do, because once this bill becomes law, it applies to workplaces, learning institutions, domestic environments, and so it can cover quite a few places, and they're looking to expand it even more now.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're inside of the legal landscape. By the way, if you have a question on this subject that you'd like to ask, you can give us a call right now, 876-906-9557 or 876-906-9559. Here's another question I wanted to ask you, Mr. Leiba. Now, sexual harassment and sexual assault are sometimes used interchangeably, and we understand too often incorrectly. Now, can you sort of clarify how sexual assault differs from sexual harassment?
Well, to put it very simply, sexual assault involves a touch, some kind of hold, grab, usually in a sexual way or manner. While sexual harassment, as I said, it doesn't actually you don't need to touch the person. It can involve a touch, and you can have harassment that could potentially constitute assault. But harassment is actually much broader than assault. So assault is also a crime for which you can be convicted and go to jail. harassment would be more in the nature of what they call a civil issue, meaning that it's an issue between employer, employee, school administration, and the student and the teacher, that type of thing. So it's between citizens and it's not brought by the state. But if sexual assault is a crime for which you can be imprisoned.
Tell us about the legal consequences for such actions or allegations, really.
Well, if it is that you are charged with any criminal offense, you would be arrested as a general rule, depending on the nature of the offense. You'd be brought and you'd be incarcerated until you're granted bail, and then you'd have to go through the criminal justice system, which can take many, many years. When it is that it involves a civil matter, they're looking at setting up a special tribunal to hear complaints about sexual harassment in the workplace and schools, etc. So there'd be a special tribunal that would be set up. So you wouldn't have to go through the whole court process. You would go through a designated ministry, make a complaint. They'd seek to resolve the matter, and if it's not resolved, then to go to a specially designated tribunal.
So persons who have suffered these attacks, they can rest assured that even before the changes to the law, they can get some recourse in court.
Well, right now that part is a little unclear, and I think that's why the law is needed, because really what you'd have to do is try to claim breach of contract, and it's very hard to prove damage for a touch. Usually when you're in court, it's about like a personal injury, you're in a car accident, broken foot, you're in a wheelchair, that type of thing, and you can quantify that. But it's very hard to measure damage for, a back rub or discomfort. And then things like, well, I wasn't promoted because I didn't give in to advances. Those things are very hard to establish and prove in the current system. So, it would benefit from some structure as to how it is to be approached and so on and assessed. That's where we are, because right now we have no sexual harassment laws at all.
Okay. All right, we're learning so much. Here's a question, if you don't mind, coming in from one of our listeners. I'll throw it to you. What are some things taken for granted in the workplace that people are not aware of that can be considered seriously as sexual harassment? The Jamaican workplace is a very interesting place. Every workplace will have a different type of social structure. So, things again like, complimenting usually women on how they look, that in and of itself can potentially constitute harassment. That's, as I said, that's a nice dress, that's a nice top, or you can go further, that fits you really well, and once you start speaking about somebody else's physical attributes, that certainly can constitute harassment in the workplace. So even if there's no touch, just the way you speak, and then even in legislation, having a conversation about sexual things that make someone uncomfortable. So you may not be saying to them, oh, you look nice, but you start speaking about your favorite sexual position, sex acts, and so on, and that makes them uncomfortable, even though it's strictly speaking is not directed at them. You don't find much by way of complaints from men when women give them compliments, though, do you?
You do not. That's another part of our society and culture. But the fact is, the sexual harassment legislation is what they call gender neutral. So it's from one person to another. So a man can complain that, she's been complimenting me too much. I feel uncomfortable.
I tell you this much, Mr. Leiba. When my colleague, female, recently complimented me on my cologne, I took it well, actually. She even went public on air with it. So,
oh boy, well, the record is there. She can't deny it. No.
Many witnesses.
Many witnesses.
Yes. In closing, though, we turn to what we call the did you know tidbit? Do you have a did you know tidbit for us to close out?
Well, I think the most important thing for people to know is that if there is harassment that results in you losing your job, you can still go to the Ministry of Labour to make a complaint, even without the new law in place. So I think it's important for people to still know there's still an outlet, there's still an avenue for harassment or rejected advances that results in loss of employment.
We've learned a lot this morning. I thank you so very much for the information you shared. Emile Leiba, partner at DunnCox Attorneys. Thank you and have a good day.
Sure, no problem.
And I'm sure we'll catch up with you again sometime soon on The Legal Landscape. Here on The Edge 105 FM, we partner with our friends, attorneys at law from DunnCox. And every morning we'll have one attorney for the next several weeks discussing legal topics, wills and trusts, probate, sexual harassment, and other interesting topics right here inside of The Legal Landscape.